make sure that they're okay with it. I think they would, because the only question the Corps ever has is that we can get back there in case there's a flood fight.
15 foot.
So we need to describe where this is at, determine how much, if any, land would need to be sold or somehow other conveyed. I think we determined that selling it is preferable to leasing, right, Terry? And even then, it sets a precedence, and we'd have to determine how much that land is worth. Because it's a council member, you know, we have to make sure that
You know where that collector is? There's a certain setback from the collector.
that's what I said,
right?
15
Is it
feet.
15 feet?
Yep.
And then the red dot is, that's what they consider to be the toe of the dike?
No.
Yes.
That's the storm sewer.
No?
That's the storm sewer.
No, the storm sewer is a different colored line, I believe. But again, we're looking at a map, we're trying to make decisions, and we don't
Which
really
map
know.
are we looking at?
This first one.
The one that says collector? No. We put the collector line in, that's what that green thing is. That's what we did with our engineering look at.
Right,
That's the seepage?
Seepage
Yeah.
collectors.
Okay.
There's no way that.
Yep, please.
Mr. Mayor and Council, it may be that you're getting ahead of yourself, not that I want to make this more difficult than it is. In our discussions with Mr. Colvinson and the desire to put a solar array on the property, there's a number of concerns. We just passed an ordinance recently for these types of things. And you would need a good application for Mr. Colvinson to determine exactly what is intended to be put there. My understanding is that the size requirements are exceeding the ordinance.
about 4 feet.
Well, you have a square foot requirement maximum in your ordinance, and so my understanding is there would have to be a request for a variance from that. There might be some setbacks problems that could or may be alleviated by selling or leasing city property. There's a number of concerns with the application itself that are unclear, and you're kind of getting ahead of yourself. If you were to ask me my recommendation, if you should entertain an immediate request for 3 or 4 variances on an ordinance that you just passed, I would say I consider that very poor management, because you just passed it. And there was public comment available and it was published, and none of this was brought up at that time. And I explained this when we met, that granting variances for new ordinances should be granted sparingly, rather than as a matter of course, because why didn't you just do it when you drafted the ordinance? Then the issue of city property. Where is it going to be placed? How much are you going to have? Is it going to impact any city services or anything that we might need now or might need in the future? You have some city property that is being used for signage and things around town, and they're leasing it from you. The third problem is, how do you come up with a value? And I know it's only a small area, but you have to come up with a value that's reasonable, and you have to quantify it somehow, and that unfortunately would probably require an appraisal of the property. Meeting the cost to come up with an answer for this initial question, can you buy the land? When you add in a survey and appraisal costs and everything else, would far exceed probably the value of the land itself. And that's just reality. If the council is entertaining something, at least you should have some request that would go to the zoning board to see exactly what's intended to be put there, and if it complies with your current ordinance. If you want to proceed and have 3 or 4 variance requests on a brand new ordinance, that's not advisable. You need to look at it carefully, and it should go through the proper channels.
We know for sure that the side yard, the ordinance anticipates them to be a rear yard or up on the roof, and that's just not possible on this lot. So the side yard variance, I think, makes some sense because of the location. But I think Terry's also right about the numerous setback issues that may exist. And there could be a remedy, although no one wants to entertain it, which is to bring it closer to the house, but now we're gonna impact your greenhouses. So it's like, they exist, but is the hardship really because you don't wanna put it there? Or, do you have to put it at the northern end?
I don't have to put it up at all.
Right, I'm just stating the case here.
Well, my recommendation to the council would be that before you expend any city funds, the applicant should have to give a clear application as to what they wanna use and what it's for and where it would impact city property. And if the variance is requested, the zoning board would have to look at it to see exactly what's there
On a survey.
on the survey. You shouldn't expend any city dollars on it until you get to that point. And I offend equally, so it's a recommendation that would come for whoever.
It's okay, I'll just go buy banking another time.
It is what it is. You can't make exceptions.
Hey, guys, it's no big deal with me, it's just something that we run across after I applied for it.
Yeah, cause I don't think you were aware, cause it
I
didn't
was
seem
not.
like it was on, it looked like it got recorded sometime in the early '70s.
60s, or
No,
70s.
that was actually got
Yeah.
on the statement.
recorded.
Yeah, but even
But the
buying,
sale was very clear that it was sold by the previous owner to the city for the construction of it.
but even selling the land won't answer your question if the array that you're proposing is even feasible under the current ordinance without various exceptions or variance requests. So, the land issue is one, but number two, is the project even feasible under the current ordinance? Is the next one.
Is the size of the array, determined to produce, a certain amount of electricity or whatever, or can it be reduced
Sure,
to fit
right,
the ordinance, or the,
Right.
yeah,
but then
the
my
solar ordinance.
overall cost is not feasible,
okay, then the payback doesn't,
it's not there.
Well, do you have any other questions for me?
When I say going forward, as we follow our attorney's advice.
so I guess why we're paying him too.
What?
That's why he gets paid the big bucks.
Yeah, well,
Yeah. What is the purpose of this other map? What,
It's all different, his parcel, but one shows stormwater better, one shows the levee collector system. Couldn't find one map that had everything on it.
oh, okay.
But that's what a survey would show. A survey would show all of the utilities that are in the ground there.
And define the necessary setback
We
requirement.
would be able to determine that, correct. An engineer or somebody would have to place where the array would be, so that we could see exactly where it was gonna be. Then we could then determine if there's an encroachment, and then what variances might be necessary.